The alien ship floated in the dark void of space, hidden behind a cluster of silent rocks. Its walls were lined with screens that showed images of Earth below. Blue oceans, green forests, and bright cities filled the view. A group of alien watchers sat inside, their tall bodies wrapped in silver armor that shimmered in the low light. Their eyes glowed faintly as they whispered among themselves. "These humans are weak," one hissed, his voice cold. Another answered, "Yes, their world is divided, their minds too simple. They cannot fight the coming storm." They thought of humans as fragile creatures, too fragile to survive what was about to arrive. But deep inside the planet's orbit, something unexpected stirred. A faint signal crossed the galaxy, sharp and sudden. It was a warning cry. Earth's defenses had been triggered. The aliens leaned forward, their long fingers tapping on the controls. "Strange," one muttered. "They move faster than we thought." On the screens, human warships began to rise from hidden bases, their engines glowing with fire. Fighters lined up in the sky, ready to face what was coming. The watchers blinked in surprise. "They prepare for war," one whispered, his tone uneasy. The stars trembled as the enemy fleet arrived. A crack split the void like shattered glass, and black ships poured out, massive and endless. The watchers expected humans to panic, to scream, to run. Instead, they saw pilots steady their ships, voices calm in the comms. "Hold the line," one human officer said, his voice steady and strong. "For Earth, for our people." The aliens exchanged glances. "They do not run," one whispered in disbelief. Explosions tore through the darkness as the first battle began. Missiles streaked across the sky, red fire chasing black shadows. The alien watchers felt their own hearts beat faster. Smoke filled the screens as the first human ships were torn apart. Bodies drifted in the void, and broken metal spun endlessly. Yet even in loss, humans did not break. "Forward," another officer commanded, his ship burning but still flying. "Do not let them through." The aliens stared at the courage they saw. It was not the chaos they expected, it was unity. Even as ships fell, more rose to replace them. "Impossible," one watcher muttered. "They fight as if they believe they can win." The battle raged on, and the watchers grew silent. There, silver armor reflected the glow of fire from the screens. "Look there," one pointed suddenly. On the edge of the fight, a small human ship broke formation. It moved with reckless speed, charging toward the heart of the enemy fleet. The aliens leaned forward. "Foolish," one said. "That pilot has lost hope." But the pilot's voice came through the comms, strong and clear. "If I fall, let them remember Earth stood tall." The watchers froze at the words. There was no fear, only defiance. The small ship weaved through a storm of lasers, its hull burning, its shields failing, yet it pressed forward, closer and closer to the enemy. A flagship. The aliens gasped as the human ship vanished into the shadows. Then, a moment later, the screens lit up with blinding fire. The enemy's core vessel erupted in an explosion that shook the stars. Silence followed, only broken by the crackle of human comms. "Target destroyed," a trembling voice said. The aliens stared at the image. One human ship had turned the tide of battle. The enemy fleet wavered, their movements scattered and broken. Humanity pressed the attack, pushing forward with all their strength. "Do not stop," a commander ordered, his face pale but eyes fierce. "We fight until they run." The aliens whispered among themselves. "They are not weak," one finally admitted. "They are dangerous." Fear crept into their voices. Fear not of the enemy ships, but of the humans themselves. They realized they were witnessing something greater than survival. They were watching the birth of a legend. When the dust cleared, Earth still stood. The humans were scarred, bloodied and grieving, but alive. Smoke rose from broken ships, but their voices on the comms carried pride. "We held the line," one whispered. "We did not fall." The alien watchers sat in silence, their glowing eyes wide. One pilot, one act, and they changed everything. One said slowly, another nodded. A legend was born this day, a fire that will spread through the stars. The aliens looked at each other and knew the truth. The galaxy would never be the same. They had come only to observe, expecting to witness the fall of humanity. Instead, they had seen defiance burn brighter than death. They had seen humans rise from the edge of despair and strike back with impossible strength. And deep inside their hearts, even as fear gripped them, one thought echoed louder than all others. Humanity was not to be underestimated. Not now, not ever. The void burned red as the battle grew darker. The alien watchers leaned closer to their glowing screens, their sharp eyes locked on every movement of the human fleet. The enemy ships moved like shadows, massive and endless. They poured fire into the sky, crushing anything that stood in their way. Yet the humans did not break. Their voices on the comms were calm and strong. "Hold formation," a commander ordered. "We do not run, we fight." The watchers whispered to each other in disbelief. They had seen many species crumble at the first sight of defeat, but humans clung to the fight like fire clings to wood. Explosions tore across the battlefield, sending broken metal spinning through the void. Human pilots screamed into their radios, some with pain, some with courage. "I've lost my wing, still firing," one voice crackled. Another shouted, "I can't hold my shields, going in anyway." The watchers stiffened at the sound. Their silver armor reflected the red glow of war. "They rush into death willingly," one muttered. "What madness is this?" But another answered in a low voice, "No, not madness. This is something else." A massive enemy cruiser pushed forward, its cannons glowing with deadly fire. The watchers knew what would happen next. They expected the humans to retreat, but the screens showed something they could not understand. Human ships swarmed the cruiser like angry insects, throwing themselves against its shields. Every strike cost lives, but each attack weakened the giant vessel. Keep pressure, a voice shouted. The watchers gasped when the cruiser's defenses finally collapsed under the weight of human sacrifice. A wave of fire swallowed it, and the giant ship cracked apart. For a moment, silence fell over the alien chamber. Only the hum of their machines remained. "They destroy ships far greater than their own," one whispered in awe. The leader of the watchers narrowed his eyes. "This is not what the record said of humans," he said. "They were supposed to break easily." But as the battle raged, the truth became clear. The humans were not only fighting, they were adapting. They shifted formation with each loss, filling gaps with survivors, turning chaos into strategy. In the middle of the storm, a group of young pilots flew together, their voices rising over the comms. "We've got this. Don't let fear take us," one said. His hands shook on the controls, but he pressed forward. "If we fall fighting," another replied. The watchers leaned forward, feeling the tension build inside them. The young pilots dived into a cluster of enemy ships, weaving between fire, their small crafts exploding one by one. Yet before the last one fell, they managed to destroy 2 enemy destroyers. The watchers froze, their eyes wide. They fight, even when death is certain. The enemy fleet roared back with fury, doubling their fire. Human ships shattered, voices faded, the battlefield filled with screams and silence. For a moment, the watchers believed this was the end. Earth would be crushed, the legend of humans broken before it truly began. But then, from the chaos, a signal cut through the comms. It was the same voice as before, the commander who had refused to surrender. "All units, regroup, we strike together." The watchers saw the scattered humans pull themselves back into formation. Like fragments of steel drawn to a magnet, broken ships still moved. Pilots with torn voices still answered, "Copy, moving in. Copy, we're still alive." The regrouped humans struck with sudden force. They pushed forward as if anew. Fire had been lit inside them. The watchers felt something shift in the room. They were no longer just observing a battle. They were witnessing a storm. One alien whispered almost to himself, "They are not fighting to win. They are fighting because they refuse to stop." The leader of the Watchers clenched his fist. "That is why they are dangerous." The battle twisted again when the enemy deployed their secret weapon, a massive ship unlike the rest, darker, heavier, with weapons that glowed like burning suns. It cut through the human fleet with terrifying speed. One shot from its cannons destroyed 5 human ships at once. The comms filled with shock. "We can't touch it," one voice cried. "It's tearing us apart." Another voice cut in, sharp and steady. "Stay focused. There's always a way." The Watchers' eyes gleamed as they waited to see panic, but panic never came. Instead, humans began targeting the smaller ships around the monster, picking them off one by one, breaking its support. As the giant weapon ship pressed closer to Earth, one human pilot broke formation. His small craft turned and sped toward the beast. "No, don't! You'll die!" a voice called through the comms. The pilot only answered, "Then I'll die, but they'll remember." The Watchers held their breath as the small ship streaked toward the enemy, weaving through fire, closer, closer, until it slammed into one of the glowing cannons. A blinding light followed, and half the weapon ship went dark. The humans roared with new hope. "They've hurt it! Hit it now!" Missiles and lasers struck again and again until the monster staggered. The Watchers whispered to each other, fear finally in their voices. "We have seen species fight before, but never like this. They bleed, they burn, but they keep rising." The leader leaned forward, his eyes glowing brighter. "Mark this day. The galaxy will remember." When the dust settled, the battlefield was littered with broken ships. Human numbers were thin, yet the enemy had been forced to retreat, the comms filled with exhausted voices. "We're alive," one whispered. "Earth stands." Another said weakly. The alien Watchers sat back in their seats, silent and shaken. They had expected to see weakness, but instead they had seen courage burn through despair. They realized the battle was far from over, but one truth had already been written: humanity could not be broken easily. In that moment, a thought spread among the Watchers like a shadow. If humans could fight like this at the edge of extinction, then what would they become when they grew stronger? The answer filled them with dread, yet also with awe. They had not only watched a battle, they had watched a legend take root, and it was only the beginning. The battlefield had turned into a graveyard of metal and fire. Human ships floated broken, their twisted hulls glowing faintly as sparks danced into the dark void. The alien Watchers stared at the screens, their silver armor reflecting the red. Flames of war. "It is ending," one of them whispered. "The humans cannot hold any more." Another leaned closer, his voice low and uncertain. "Do not speak too soon. They fight like no others." The enemy fleet pressed harder, wave after wave, black ships cutting through the remains of human defenses. A commander's voice came across the comms, heavy but steady. "All units, fall. Back to the second line. Regroup. Do not scatter." His words carried strength, but even he knew they were running out of ships. "We can't take another hit," one pilot cried, his face pale. "We've lost too many already." Another pilot shouted back, "We fight until the end, no matter what." The alien Watchers exchanged glances, uneasy. The humans should have surrendered by now, yet they refused. Suddenly, the sky lit up as a massive blast tore through the human fleet. One of Earth's largest carriers had been struck, its shields collapsing, its hull ripped open, spilling fire and bodies into space. The comms filled with static, then silence. The alien Watchers shivered. "That was their heart," one said coldly. "Without it, they cannot last." But then, through the crackle, a broken voice rose. "This is not the end. Stand with me. Hold your ground." It was a young officer, barely more than a boy, but his voice carried like thunder. The surviving ships pulled together, forming a fragile wall of fire. Enemy cannons rained down, explosions shaking every vessel. "We can't hold, Commander," another voice cried. "They're breaking us apart." The young officer answered, "Then we make them pay for every step, every breath." The alien leader narrowed his glowing eyes. "Strange creatures, even at the edge of death, they do not yield." In the middle of the chaos, a single small craft broke formation. It darted through the smoke and burning wreckage, heading straight for the enemy's main fleet. "Where is he going?" one pilot shouted. "Get back in line!" But the pilot did not respond, his breathing heavy, his eyes locked forward. "If this is my end, let it count for something," he muttered. The alien watchers leaned forward. "Foolish," one whispered. "He is throwing his life away." Yet another whispered, "Or perhaps he is about to change everything." The small craft sped faster, weaving between enemy fire. The pilot's voice came through faintly. "For Earth for everyone." His ship trembled under the storm of lasers, but still he pressed on, closer and closer. The enemy flagship loomed ahead, massive and cold, cannons turning to target him. A voice screamed through the comms, "Pull back, you'll die!" But the pilot only answered, "Then I die a human." The alien watcher's screens filled with fire as the small ship slammed into the flagship's core. A blinding light consumed the void. The massive vessel shook and cracked apart. The comms filled with gasps. "He did it!" one voice cried. "The flagship is down." For a moment, even the enemy fleet faltered, confusion spreading among their lines. The alien watchers sat frozen, unable to speak. One human pilot had done the impossible, but victory was not yet in reach. The enemy, though shaken, surged forward again with fury. More human ships burned, their numbers thinning to almost nothing. "We can't hold them much longer," a desperate voice cried. The commander's voice cut in, harsh but strong. "Hold! Every second we stand is a victory." The watchers could feel the tension grow. It was no longer just a battle. It was survival painted across the stars. Amid the chaos, another twist came. The enemy unleashed hidden drones, small and fast, swarming like a storm of blades. Human ships fell quickly under the sudden attack. "They're everywhere. We can't shake them," a pilot shouted. The commander's voice broke through again. "Focus on their hive ship. Destroy it, and the drones will fall." The humans turned their fire toward the dark vessel guiding. The swarm, every shot cost lives, every move was soaked in sacrifice. Finally, after endless minutes of desperate struggle, the hive ship exploded and the swarm went silent. The humans cheered, but their cheer was thin. They had lost too much. The alien watchers sat in silence, their glowing eyes dim. They had expected weakness, but what they saw was something else, one whispered softly. "They are not winning, yet they do not stop." Another added, "Even in loss they create legends." The leader's voice was cold and sharp. "Yes, and that is why they are the most dangerous of all." When the smoke cleared, only a handful of human ships remained, their hulls torn, their shields broken, but they still moved, still alive. "Earth still stands," the commander whispered, his voice cracking. "We still stand." The watchers leaned back in their seats, the weight of what they had witnessed, pressing into them. They had watched species rise and fall before, but never like this. One alien spoke the words the others feared. This was not just a battle, this was the birth of something greater. His voice was low, almost trembling. "Today, humanity has planted its flag in history, not with victory, but with defiance." The leader nodded slowly. "And the galaxy will never forget." The battlefield was quiet now, filled only with drifting debris and the faint glow of distant fires. Yet within that silence, a legend was alive. A single act of courage had burned itself into memory. And though the humans were broken, their spirit had only grown stronger. The watchers knew the war was far from finished, but they also knew this: humanity would rise again, and when they did, the stars themselves would tremble. The void was heavy with smoke and silence, broken only by the drifting wreckage of ships. that once carried hope. Human survivors floated in their damaged vessels, their voices tired but still alive over the comms. "Is anyone still here?" one pilot whispered, his screen cracked, sparks flying near his face. A second voice answered weakly, "We're here, we're not gone yet." Those words carried through the fleet like a faint spark, small but powerful. The alien watchers leaned closer to their glowing screens, their cold eyes fixed on the humans who refused to vanish. One alien muttered, "It makes no sense. Their numbers are gone. Their strength is broken. Why do they still fight?" Another answered in a low whisper, "Because something inside them does. Not allow surrender." In the heart of the chaos, the commander's ship was barely holding together, panels torn, smoke filling the bridge. He stood with blood on his face, his hand gripping the edge of a broken console. "We are not finished," he said firmly, though his voice trembled. "As long as one of us draws breath, we fight." His crew looked at him with hollow eyes, exhausted but inspired. "Yes, Commander," one replied. "We fight." The alien watchers shivered at the sound, for the words carried more weight than any weapon. The enemy fleet, furious at their losses, prepared a final strike. Dark ships regrouped, their weapons glowing brighter. A cold silence fell before the storm. Human comms were filled with quiet breathing, broken voices and sudden laughter. "If this is it," one pilot said, "at least they will remember we stood tall." Another answered, "They will. Legends are not born in victory, but in defiance." The watchers exchanged uneasy looks. They had studied history. They knew legends that shaped galaxies. But now, they realized they were seeing one being born before their eyes. The enemy unleashed its fury, a flood of fire across the stars. Human ships broke again, but even as each one fell, they returned fire. One small fighter spun out of control, its pilot screaming, then silence followed, another craft burning and broken, still pushed forward and rammed into an enemy destroyer, exploding with it. "Do you see?" one alien whispered, his voice shaking. "They give their lives not for victory, but to show they will never bow." The leader of the watchers narrowed his glowing eyes. "Yes, and that is what makes them dangerous beyond measure." In the middle of the destruction, something unexpected happened. The humans began to move as if one, scattered survivors pulling themselves together. Their broken ships circled, protecting each other, their weapons firing in perfect rhythm. "Form on me," the commander shouted, his voice cutting through the static. "Together, we are stronger." And suddenly the humans, bloodied and scarred, looked unstoppable. The alien watchers felt the air in their chamber grow heavy, as if the very stars around them trembled. A critical twist came when the enemy flagship, thought destroyed, returned from the shadows. Its damaged hull glowed, but its cannons were still alive. The human fleet faltered at the sight. "No," one pilot gasped. "We destroyed it." The commander steadied his breath. "Then we destroy it again." His voice was calm, almost cold, and it carried into every ear. The aliens leaned forward, tense. The small human fleet charged once more, facing a ship that should have crushed them with ease. Lasers filled the void. Explosions roared. Ships broke apart, yet the humans pressed on. One pilot's voice cracked. "Shields failing, still firing." Another shouted, "Engine gone," aiming at their core. The alien watchers felt their hands tremble against their seats. Their glowing eyes followed every move. One human ship darted closer to the flagship, weaving between storms of fire. "Cover me!" the pilot called. The others answered instantly, even those already dying. "Go! We're with you!" That small craft pushed straight into the heart of the enemy giant, and with one final strike, it tore through the flagship's core. The explosion was so bright the screens went white. When the light faded, the battlefield was quiet. The enemy flagship was gone. Their fleet scattered in confusion. Humanity had done the impossible again. The survivors cried out across the comms, voices filled with exhaustion and fire. "It's down! It's finally down!" The commander leaned, Against the console, his voice low but strong. "Remember this day, not for the ships we lost, but for the courage we found." The alien watchers sat frozen in silence, their glowing eyes wide. One of them whispered slowly, "This is not war, this is legend," another added. "We thought them weak, but they are the fire that refuses to die." The leader of the watchers clenched his fists. "The galaxy will remember this, and so will we. Humans have shown us what they truly are, and it is terrifying." The survivors drifted in silence, broken but not defeated. Stars reflected in their shattered ships as their voices echoed, "We held, we endured, we are still here." The aliens looked at each other, and for the first time, fear lived in their hearts. They had not only watched a battle, they had witnessed the moment when humanity carved its name into the stars. A legend had been born, not in triumph, but in the refusal to bow. And as the alien watchers sat in the dark chamber, one thought echoed louder than all others. The universe would never be the same again. The battlefield drifted in uneasy silence, broken only by sparks from ruined ships and the faint echo of dying engines. The humans had survived the impossible, but at a terrible cost. Their fleet was a shadow of what it once was, yet the survivors still moved with purpose. Still holding their line as if defeat was not allowed, the alien watchers sat inside their hidden chamber, their glowing screens flickering with the broken light of battle. One whispered, his voice tense, "How can they still fight? They have nothing left," another answered with unease. "They fight not with ships, but with will, and that is harder to break." Far out in the darkness, the enemy regrouped, their scattered forces pulled together, forming once more into a deadly wall of shadow. The humans tightened their formation, pilots whispering to each other through broken comms. "We cannot let them reach Earth," one said firmly. "If we fall, the planet falls." Another voice, tired but determined, replied, "Then we fall standing." The alien watchers leaned closer, their eyes wide. "They do not speak like soldiers," one muttered. "They speak like legends already written." The enemy advanced again, slower this time, cautious. Their commanders had seen what one human act of defiance could do. Now they tested the humans carefully, sending smaller ships forward, probing for weakness. Human fighters pounced on them like wolves, tearing through the first wave with desperate fury. The alien watchers felt their own hands tighten. "Do you see?" one said in a low voice. "The enemy hesitates. They fear humans." The leader of the watchers spoke coldly. "Fear spreads quickly, and today it has a human face." But fear was not only in the enemy. The alien watchers themselves felt it now, a chill creeping through their armor as they studied the screens. They had thought they were safe, distant observers. Yet what they saw stirred something deep inside them. One finally whispered the thought that haunted them all. If humans can fight like this when broken, what will they become when strong? No one answered, but silence was louder than words. The humans, though battered, did not wait to be struck. The commander's voice echoed again across the comms, sharp and unyielding. "We move first. Hit them before they strike us." His crew gasped at the order. "Sir, we don't have the strength." He looked at the ruined bridge around him and said, "Strength is not in metal, it is in us. Follow me." The alien watchers leaned closer, shocked. "He attacks while broken," one said. "This is madness." But another shook his head slowly. "This is not madness. This is human." The humans launched forward, a charge that no one expected. Their ships, cracked and burning, cut into the enemy formation. Lasers flared, explosions roared. Enemy ships fell into confusion, their neat walls shattered by the storm of desperate fighters. Pilots shouted through comms, "Push! Push harder!" Another cried out, "We have them on the run!" The alien watchers stared, disbelief turning into awe. They had seen wars end with broken survivors begging for mercy, but here, broken survivors became hunters. The enemy, shaken, unleashed its reserve fleet, massive carriers sliding into the fight. Their guns glowed with deadly fire. For a moment, the humans staggered. "They're too many," a pilot screamed. "We can't hold." But then another voice cut through the fear, quiet but strong. "Remember why we fight, not for victory, but for tomorrow." The alien watchers froze, those words ringing in their ears. "Not for victory, but for tomorrow," whispered one. "They do not need to win to conquer." The clash grew violent, fire spreading across the void. Humans fell, but every death seemed to fuel the survivors more. One pilot, engines failing, laughed into his comms. "Tell them Earth remembers me." Then he rammed his fighter into an enemy cruiser, taking it down with him. The alien watchers gasped. They embraced death as if it is a weapon. The leader finally spoke, his voice heavy. "Yes, and that makes them immortal." As the battle reached its height, something unexpected happened. The enemy's command ships began to hesitate, their formation breaking. Fear had spread through their ranks. They had expected to crush humanity easily. But now every move felt dangerous. Every human strike carried not just fire, but terror. The alien watchers whispered among themselves, "They are no longer fighting humans. They are fighting an idea, and an idea cannot be killed." Slowly, the enemy retreated, pulling their forces back into the shadows. The humans did not chase, too broken to continue, but their silence was victory enough. The comms filled with weary voices. "They're leaving," one whispered in disbelief. Another pilot, his ship barely alive, said softly, "We did not win, but we did not lose." The alien watchers sat frozen, their eyes wide. The silence in the chamber was suffocating, for they understood what had happened. One alien finally broke the quiet, his voice shaking. "We came to watch them fall, but we watched something else instead." Another nodded slowly. "We watched fear shift from humans to the galaxy." The leader leaned forward, his face grim. "Yes, the enemy fears them now, and so do we." The battlefield drifted in silence once more, but the silence was heavy, not empty. It carried whispers of defiance, of sacrifice, of something far greater than survival. Humanity had stood against the impossible, and though they bled and broke, they left behind something far stronger. The alien watchers realized they had witnessed the moment when fear changed sides. A legend had been born, and fear now belonged not to humans, but to those who dared to stand against them. The stars shimmered faintly above the battlefield, lighting the ruins of countless ships drifting silently through the void. The humans who survived floated among the wreckage, their vessels scarred, their shields shattered, yet their voices still rose through broken comms. "Earth still stands," one pilot whispered, his voice weak but steady. Another replied, "We're not gone. We're still here." The alien watchers sat inside their dark chamber, their glowing screens casting pale light on their silver armor. They had come to see the end of humanity, but instead they had seen something else, something that unsettled them deeply. The enemy, defeated in spirit, though not destroyed in numbers, had retreated into the black. Their ships disappeared like shadows swallowed by deeper shadows. They had left not because humans were stronger, but because humans refused to fall. The commander of the human fleet stood inside his ruined bridge, smoke curling around him. His hands shook, but his voice did not. "This day will be remembered," he said quietly, "not because of what we lost, but because of what we proved." His crew, battered and bleeding, looked at him with hollow eyes, yet inside those eyes burned fire. The alien watchers leaned closer to their screens, studying the faces of the survivors. "They are broken," one muttered, "yet they are proud." Another whispered, "They have no right to be proud. They should mourn. They should surrender." The leader of the watchers, silent until now, spoke coldly, "And yet they do not, which is why fear now belongs to us." His words fell heavy inside the chamber, for each of them felt the same. A human pilot's voice broke across the comms, cracked with exhaustion but steady. "If they come again, we will be ready." Another answered, coughing through smoke. "We may not be many, but we are enough." The alien watchers exchanged uneasy glances. "They believe it," one said. "They truly believe it." The thought filled the room with dread, because belief was something no weapon could erase, as the human survivors began to regroup, dragging the wreckage of their fleet back toward Earth. A silence fell across the void, yet it was not the silence of defeat, it was the silence of something greater. The alien watchers knew this was no longer a war of ships and guns, it was a war of memory. The galaxy would speak of what happened. Here, whispers spreading from one world to another, not of human weakness, but of human defiance. One alien finally voiced the truth, his voice trembling. "We did not just watch a battle, we watched a legend born." Another added softly, "A single act of courage has changed everything. One pilot, one ship, one sacrifice, and now the galaxy will never see humans the same way again." The leader's eyes glowed brighter. "Yes, today the universe has seen the fire of humanity, and that fire will spread until all know their name." The commander of the humans stood before the cracked window of his ship, gazing at the stars. He spoke softly to no one, and everyone at once. "Let them tell this story, let them tell it well, so no one forgets that we stood, even when standing seemed impossible." His crew listened in silence, tears in their eyes, hearts heavy but unbroken. One whispered, "They will tell it, Commander, they must." The alien watchers sat back in their seats, silent now. They had come as witnesses, thinking themselves safe, detached. But what they had seen had pierced their armor. They realized that one day their own people would face humanity, and on that day they would remember this battle and the fear would return. The leader closed his eyes briefly, then said, "We must prepare, for the humans have shown us what they are capable of, and the galaxy will tremble when they rise again." The void stretched wide and endless, filled with the remains of fire. Yet in that destruction lived something immortal, something no enemy could kill. Humanity had carved its mark into the stars, not with victory, but with defiance that no force could erase. A legend had been born in the blood and ashes of this day, and though the humans mourned their fallen, they carried with them a strength that reached far beyond their world. The survivors drifted toward Earth, broken but not beaten. Behind them, the battlefield whispered with the memory of courage. Ahead of them, the planet shone with fragile light, welcoming them home. "We return," one voice said softly, "and we return as more than we were." The alien watchers turned away from their screens, the weight of what they had seen pressing into their very bones. They had not only watched history, they had felt it. And though they tried to push away the unease, deep inside, they knew the truth. The legend of this battle would echo forever. The humans had stood against the darkness and left behind something more powerful than victory. They had shown the universe that even when broken, they were unbreakable. And as the stars flickered quietly above, the watchers whispered among themselves, "A legend was born today, and nothing will ever be the same again."